had it do that. Oh,
there it goes.
Hey! Hopefully that's not a sign. Welcome! My phone just did something really weird at the beginning of this recording, so we're hoping that it's going to work. I'm with Miss Courtney Hoffmeyer. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm excited. We're going to talk about some important things. I'm Becky Montoya, Becky Montoya Wright, and I'm a licensed counselor in our community, and I'm working with the Blue Cross Blue Shield grant called Not All Wounds Are Visible. It's allowing us to educate people on mental health and share supports and resources. And I'm excited today to have Miss Hoffmeyer with me, Courtney. She and I go way back in supporting young people. And the grant is also supported by Nexus Coalition. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into our topics. But Ms. Hoffmeyer is an expert on young people and the challenges they face. And we're excited to talk about some things that you've been noticing, trends in the community in Navajo County.
Right.
But tell us a little bit about you, Courtney.
Okay. Well, I'm Courtney Hoffmeyer. I'm a principal.
Principal of a junior high.
Junior high principal. Yes. And it is a special age, and so I'm excited to talk about it. I'm a mom and a wife. I've got two grown boys. They graduated the same district, and they're delightful. We're so proud of them. Dominic is our oldest, and Andy. Dominic's working as a Phoenix firefighter.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and Andy's in his sophomore year at NAU.
Nice.
Yeah, and my husband and I we've both been educators for decades.
Decades. Combined decades of experience. Well, you started out by saying you're a junior high principal, and I also have worked at junior high for in the junior high environment for probably 20 years or so. And it's interesting because there's a lot of humor about people who choose to work in that particular age group. Humor, maybe, I don't know if humor is the right word, but no one really, as an adult, says, I wish I could go back and repeat junior high. Those were the best years of my life. In fact, a lot of other things are said about those years.
Right. But adults, there are some that just choose to work with that age group because it really is one of the best age groups to work with.
It really is.
So much fun. They're so fun.
They really are, and I completely agree. And anytime I've had a junior high staff that I'm working with, including right now, they are the most amazing adults on the face of the planet. They really carry a special extra something, and we love that. And so it's good stuff.
Right.
Well, let me talk a little bit about the grant, and then we're going to get into our topic today of challenges that we're seeing young people face, and then some things we feel like people can do to help support them. I mentioned the grant is called Not All Wounds Are Visible, and I did put the sign up today. I think it's going to make it into the shot. I can see it, so I think it's there. And on here, I have a couple of hotlines. The Lifeline crisis number is now 988, and so people can call or text that number if they are supporting themselves or someone else who they feel is experiencing a mental health crisis. And then we also have 911 up there as a reminder that if someone is having a medical condition or a suspected overdose, to just dial that 911 and get the medical attention to support that person. And in the state of Arizona, there are Good Samaritan laws. So if you are worried that calling 911 might get you in trouble because maybe you were participating in some underage activities that you shouldn't have been, or maybe you're worried that the person who is passed out might get in legal trouble, and so you're thinking, I don't want to call 911, I want to keep them from getting in trouble. The Good Samaritan laws protect you, and calling 911 could save that person's life. So when we suspect overdose, we want to call those numbers. A couple of other things, I am doing some Facebook Live parenting classes. If you get on my page, you can scroll down. There's 4 of them already in place. And I will be doing the next one in the first week of February. And we're going to talk about using the remote of the mind as a parenting strategy. It's kind of a cool concept.
And the ones, I'm just going to
please
jump in for a second. They are very helpful classes. to take a look at. So I highly recommend getting on those. Yeah, getting on
and they're
those.
short.
Right.
They're
and they're
15,
just
20 minutes.
just really great information for parents about some things that are happening. So I recommend them.
I appreciate that. Thank you. If you live in Navajo County and you want to watch all of those classes, we are doing gift card giveaways to people who do watch all of the classes that are loaded. And so you can reach out to me through private messaging. If you got to live in Navajo County for this one. Anyone can enjoy the classes in Navajo County if you watch them and you want to participate in a gift card giveaway. Reach out to me and I'll give you more specifics on that. And then I'm not sure who I'll be talking to in January in my chat, like I'm talking to Courtney today, but I'll post that as soon as I do know. One other thing I have coming up in January is a free suicide prevention class, and that will be on January 26th. It's in person. It's not going to be on Facebook Live or any type of virtual format. It is in person. Again, if you're interested in that, reach out to me through private messaging and I can give you more information. It's only 90 minutes and it's great, helpful information. So those are some things that are coming up. Courtney?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to start by sharing any personal challenge you faced as a young person or not so much?
This is just coming up because I recently shared a junior high embarrassing moment. But I figured, is this what you're...
Well, you can choose that one, or you can go, you don't have to do that one, and if you don't even want to share one, this is a safe place, and you don't have to.
Right. I am actually I'm happy to share because kids, junior high kids need to know especially that the embarrassing moments you face you will get past them and you'll have so many more embarrassing moments that you can laugh about later.
Yes.
One particular moment in junior high that I remember, I had stairs in my junior high and I chose to wear a skirt one day and I fell on the stairs in my skirt. I thought about that for a year. And nobody else did, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But in my mind, that was the most embarrassing thing that could have ever happened to me.
Yes.
Right.
So how did the rest of that, do you remember getting up and going to class?
I stood right up and I gathered my things from the stairs.
Put your skirt back in place?
And I marched up the stairs and went to class and pretended it never even happened.
But it just sat with you.
Right. And there are things that that's something else that's something that with junior high kids, we know that it is a rough time and little tiny pieces of moments, they recognize them as being some of the most traumatic things that are, they have these ideas that this is the worst thing. And so we try to really recognize that we hear them when they are talking about it or when they're embarrassed, or when they're upset, and honor it because it is, in their mind, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And once we become adults, it can be tempting to hear the concern that they're having right at that moment and think of all of the big things that have happened to us in our life since our junior high days and to really downplay the significance of what they're feeling right in that moment. And that's true even for professionals that have been working with young people. It can be a temptation to want to say, for example, a junior high breakup. We might want to be inclined to say, oh, you think that breakup was bad? Well, just you wait. It's only going to get worse. And instead of validating the pain they're experiencing right then, we're kind of jumping into our own experiences and not really sitting with them in the space that they're sharing. And that is the challenge of the day with young people, I think.
And there are in a given day, there are, hundreds of moments in children's lives that are happening that it could just be a difficult moment for them. So we recognize those and help them through those. And just try to make sure that we talk to them about this is a moment and and you have so many more moments that are going to be wonderful moments. But my silly story about falling on the stairs is just a little silly piece of it. There are a lot of really heavy things that kids are going through too. And so we still try to, recognize it, honor it, help them through it and help them see past it, that there are going to be a lot of great things happening for them.
Yeah. And it can be really difficult for them to see past the moment that they're in.
Right.
But one of the things I love watching Courtney do with young people is, and I actually shared this in one of the parenting classes, is this concept of connect and then redirect. And you've had, is it called de-escalation training?
Yes.
And so that's kind of like to handle if a young person's really elevated with frustration or anger, possibly. Right. And sometimes you see that, but sometimes you might just see someone who's sad or having a rough day. And so the concept, the parenting concept of connect and redirect really goes hand in hand with the training you offer on de-escalation.
Right.
Once that young person, typically once they feel, wow, they're invested in me emotionally, then we can see a settling of the escalated behavior, and then we can start focusing on the redirecting.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
Yes, and we have. So there, if you, I mean, even just noticing any changes in behavior is kind of where it starts with when we're talking about the de-escalation strategies. It's we are seeing some change in behavior. So it could even be a student who's normally really excited and bouncing around and is very settled that day. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a heightened behavior, just a change in behavior that we can recognize, right? And if we recognizing those and checking in with a student, that could go a long way to helping them just regulate. And it can also, so we see a lot of times we'll see students who are, they maybe are showing some of those signs of anxiety. And they can jump from any stage, up stages and back stages, but they get into some defensive mechanisms then. And the most important piece there is to just make sure that we're not, that we're detaching and keeping it rational, right? Recognizing they might say some things to us that are really terrible. They might say things that are rude, or they're lashing out, and just recognizing it's not about us. They're having a crisis at that moment. And then, just trying to talk to them about what they're feeling, or giving them space. Sometimes kids do not want to talk to us. They just need a minute. And we have to make sure that we're giving them that time as well to bring themselves back down. There are some kids that are just amazing at regulating themselves.
Yes. I think that is something I've really observed, and especially in the last year or so, it's not uncommon on a daily basis to have one student at least a day come up who just really wants a minute to regulate.
Right.
And they're bringing their work. They're not trying to get out of class. They're not trying to get away with something. They really recognize that they just need a minute, and they have these strategies. And usually within 5 to 10 minutes, they go back to class.
Right.
Sometimes they stay a little bit longer, but it's not something more than that. It typically is them mastering that skill.
Right. And once they get regulated, then you can really have some conversations and explain to them the reason that, here are some reasons why some of what you said this is not the way to handle it. Let's talk about some strategies that would be a better way to handle it moving forward in the future. And so definitely another big piece is to make sure that we don't want to make them feel shameful. We don't want to shame them if they're acting out, if they're in an escalated state, because that isn't going to help anything. It's not going to build trust. Letting them explain to you what the issue is, and then trying to help them work their way through it is going to be a great way to build trust with them and help them work through some of their regulation strategies.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've seen you do it, and it's impressive, and it's nice to work with someone who holds young people in that space. Something I want to mention before we dive into a few other topics. There's something pretty cool. I think it's cool that the state of Arizona does, and not every community participates, but different communities have the opportunity to participate in the Arizona Youth Survey. And so this one was conducted in 2022. And then the results are broken down by, typically by school district, by county, and then by the state. And it gives some really interesting information. So with parent permission, 7th and or 8th graders, and then is it all of high school, or is it one grade level? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I don't think it's every grade level. I think it might be 2
of high school.
Right.
But with parent permission, then students may participate in this anonymous survey. And the survey collects some really interesting information about risky behaviors and dangerous situations that young people have been exposed to. And they're able to share in an anonymous format what their experience has been with those particular topics. And we are able to glean some really helpful information. And so if you get online and you want to see the results from your community, you're looking for the Arizona Youth Survey, and then put in some other identifying information of either your school district or your county, or just go to the state page and see the different breakdowns on the survey. It's really an interesting thing to follow. This one was right after after COVID and everything, and we saw so much societal trauma, and young people were really hit hard. And so it'll be interesting to see what the 2024 survey shows.
I'm really looking forward to see the results. And so that is typically in February when we have those surveys, and so we send those out. We send all that information out to parents ahead of time so they can look through it and know what it's all about.
That's right.
But there are some really interesting really interesting facts, and it's a great comparison too between county and district, or county and county. There's just a lot of ways that you can look at that information and see some differences in different areas of Arizona.
And you can see the trend for your community. You can see where are we at in 2020, where are we at in 22, where will we be in 2024? Are we seeing behaviors escalate? Are we seeing them regulate? Just kind of overall. Well, on that note, I did want to share too that in the state of Arizona, there were headlines in the month of November that were pretty shocking.
Right.
They came from different parts of the state. They weren't in our county, but they very well could have been.
Right.
I mean, we've had our turn at having some of those headlines as well. But in November, within I think a week of each other, one of the headlines had to do with a boy who was beat to death at a party, a teenage boy. And then another one in another community was about a random shooting that ended up killing a high school senior. And those two big events were just within like a week of each other.
Right.
And those are just a few that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's many others.
Right.
But those triggered our concern for young people and heightened our awareness, because we know particularly, although I don't know the specifics of either of these reports, so I'm not going to speak to the specifics of these reports, we have been aware of young people who will get together to fight.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people there are willing and want to participate in the fight, but that's not always the case. Maybe some of the people are going with the intention to fight, but other people might be going just to hang out with friends, not knowing the turn of events that are going to happen. Right.
We've seen those. I mean, we've seen those situations. I mean, we've had situations like that reported on different occasions where there's either a plan to do that, or it could be it's not a plan on one party's part, and so those are as often as we can intervene in those, we absolutely do. But it's tricky when there's so much communication on the phones about what's happening and when things are happening, and it's scary. It's definitely a scary.
It is scary to me, and it was interesting that this made the headlines in November, because I feel like in our community, I felt like this type of behavior was escalating more over quarantine, and kind of during that time, kids may have had a little more time on their hands and were bored. But I haven't really seen it or been aware of it as much the last year or so in our community, which does not mean it's not happening. It certainly could be happening.
Right.
But to see it make the news and that it's clearly still something that's going on, reminded me, we need to keep our heightened awareness about that can potentially be something that could turn just quickly into such devastation.
Right.
So those were a couple of headlines. Have there been other things in the news, or just situations that have been brought to your attention? I know a few, but I want to give you a chance if there's ones that have come to your attention.
One of the concerns that it's a national concern is vaping. That's an issue that we're seeing a lot of young people deal with. We know that there's pressure to try it. We know that there's some young people who are struggling with addiction, and they come in, the packaging that they're coming in just makes it see. I mean, it's just these little soda pop, and it's so there's concern about that. We're trying to get as much word about that out and education out on just the dangers of vaping to students. Because it is something that we're seeing. It's not just in our community. It's a nationwide problem, that we're concerned because they're not seeing the harm. We just don't know the full effects of what it could be doing to their bodies, and so we're trying to get that warning out to them.
And have you seen, sometimes, and this isn't helpful when we do this, but sometimes we make assumptions about certain types of people, and we just do, and it's not always helpful, but we do that. With the vaping, have you found that those assumptions, those generalizations, just cross every line?
It doesn't, right. It really is, there really aren't surprises when it happens anymore. It's just because it's pervasive, and we are just seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it in just kind of across the board. It doesn't really matter. It's not a type of kid or a certain group. It's just kind of, it's something that kids are either being exposed to. They're curious about it. They've been convinced to try it, or there's some that are taking it, taking it from home, and so we just never really know. We don't know exactly where they're coming from, or and we're not really surprised anymore at who's bringing them.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because in school, and maybe you remember your childhood experience, your junior high school experience, there are what we call cliques or different groups of young people. And something that's been interesting with the vaping, an aside, is that we have found it's not good, but what we have found is that there's this unity building between these groups of kids who normally would have nothing to do with each other, which isn't good. It's not good for kids to not be nice to each other. But the thing that seems to be bringing them together is a dangerous thing. And so we've been surprised at times when we've learned, wow, well, this is the person that's brought it, but these are all the people that are participating and using it. And it's not just people from their group, it's people from all different groups.
Right. Yep.
And so we want young people to be friends with a lot of different groups. We really want that. Mm-hmm. But we want them to do it in a way that's safe and not by connecting over doing dangerous things.
Right.
So what would you say to parents if they're listening to this and they're thinking, not my kid, that happens to some young people, but not mine, or maybe they're thinking, ooh, I wonder if my child is having that struggle. What would you say to
So a couple suggestions. The first one is just have a conversation. Start having conversations about, have you had somebody offer you a vape? Have you seen them on campus? Is it something that you're, are you seeing it? Where are you seeing it happen? Because we know of certain areas we're trying, they might have it in the bathroom or they might have it out on the playground. And so we're watching for these things. So having a conversation with your child is the first thing I would recommend. The second thing is take a look through just take a look through some of the conversations that are happening on social media or text messages. And it might not be that your child is actually participating in those conversations, but could be in a group that is having those conversations. And so just random checks through social media and text messaging, I think, is a really helpful tool for parents too. It just kind of gives you an eye into what some of the things are that are going on. And it's another good way too to see if other things are happening. Mm-hmm. We worry about social cyberbullying, and we worry about some other dangers, predators that are on social media. So I always encourage parents, take a look through social media, and it's not because you don't trust your child. It's because of a safety issue. You just want to make sure. And there could be some things that they're either embarrassed about showing parents, or they don't really know what to do with it. And so it's good just to have that open communication and just keep that. I'm going to be checking your phone every once in a while. And are there some things that you want to tell me about what's going on at school? But definitely having conversations, using some resources. We've sent out some parent resources before. Nexus provides great resources for parents on vaping, and it gives a lot of information about some of the dangers to your body, as well as the addiction dangers that are out there as well.
They have free classes, and they will actually set something up to tailor fit around what people would be interested in. And their website is nexuscoalition.org. It's just one X. nexuscoalition.org, and they have current information on what's coming up and how you can participate. The vapes, you talked a minute about how they're sometimes designed in really fun ways that are targeted towards teens. They are sometimes also designed to look like other items.
Right.
Like a flash drive or a Sharpie or a highlighter. And so you might not even know what you're looking for or know what they have.
Right.
And some of these devices are so small, like we would love to be on top of this all the time, but a young person or a grown-up, I mean, it could be whoever, can actually fit them in their sleeve and actually utilize the device just from their sleeve, and then in a fairly public setting without anyone really being the wiser to it. So it is a really tricky thing to manage.
Right, and then can pass it to somebody in a sleeve. And so that's another piece that we're, it's tricky. They've found some, there's some ways to pass it back and forth. There's different ones. I guess from what I'm learning, you can buy different things to hide them in. And so even in makeup cases, they're in like little makeup tubes. There are some that are being hidden in there as well.
Yeah.
And we're just learning, recently too, that I didn't realize you could build your own vape. And so you can put them, and that allows you to put whatever you want in it. So it might not just be nicotine. It might not just be THC. It could be other synthetic things that are in there to heighten effects that are extremely dangerous to young people and to anybody.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And if you are deciding to have this conversation with your children or with young people, try to consider setting the atmosphere and the stage that if they share that they have seen these things or maybe even have tried it, that you're creating a safe place where instead of feeling shock, the shock and awe of, I raised you better than this, how could you have done this, we've taught you better, that might actually limit any future conversations that you might be able to help support your young person with. So really practice how you can listen and hear in a non-judgmental way, and kind of like we said at the beginning, that you try to connect with them and then redirect so that you can feel that they were curious or that they're trying to have be accepted in their friend group, and that you can try to understand and relate with them on that before you get into the, well, give me your phone and you're grounded and you're this. Like, we want to create a platform and an atmosphere where if they do share with us, that we're setting the stage for them to share again in the future. And that can be really tricky.
It can be, and we try to do that at the school level too. We always want students to know that it's kind of like what we talked about before. It's a moment in your life, but we want to make sure that you're making some healthier choices moving forward. So how can we get you to a better spot? As far as decision making about vaping, we just want to make sure that they're staying away from that unhealthy habit. And because it can also lead to trying other things, and that's a big concern as well with all the different things that are out there now. We just we're trying to keep them away from dangerous substances.
Yeah, I like that, and I want to share real quick. Someone shared an interesting story with me, and I'll try to convey it in a way that makes sense. I don't have the name. I don't want to use any names, so I'm going to try to convey it in a helpful way. But there had been an uncle who had died by suicide, and the story behind the uncle's past prior to that decision had included a lot of risky decision making, and part of those risky decisions included an addiction to pornography that turned into some other riskier behaviors as an adult. And so the uncle had died by suicide. And then fast forward to the nephew, and he was around 11 or 12 years old when the parents observed that he was exploring and experimenting with viewing some pornography on one of the devices. And so the immediate thought of the parents was this memory of the uncle dying by suicide. And so when they approached the boy, they approached him with the most gentle, like in their minds, they were imagining the uncle when he was an 11-year-old or 12-year-old boy. And not to cast blame or anything else, but just the wonder of if when he had started making these mistakes, if someone had handled him with care, could he have been on a different path? And so with their son, they handled him with just the most compassionate love and care. And I just think it's such a great way to lead.
Absolutely.
What a great example.
Right.
Because our tendency might be, and of course different families have different moral codes, but our tendency might be to say, you know, how could you do this? And you've been taught better. And so that connection and to handle with care is so important as the leading out.
Right.
I know you brought a book with you.
I was just thinking this is a great time for me to show the book.
Yes.
So Miss Becky.
We always call each other by the titles kids use with us. It's weird to...
But she recommended this book to me, The Teenage Brain. And this is actually by a neuroscientist, Frances Jensen. It is I feel like every parent, when we start junior high, should just say, here's a book, read this book, you're going to understand so much more. And I wish I had this when my own boys were going through some of these phases, because it really does help you to understand. And when you get to those moments, because I feel like every parent who has teenagers gets to a moment where you think, I don't know if I like my kid right now. Sometimes we get to those points. Yeah. But this really helps you to understand what are they when you are asking them, what were you thinking or what are you doing? This kind of helps to really guide you through, here are some things that they might be thinking. It talks about development of the brain matter. It talks about their sleep patterns. It does talk about the dangers of drugs and vaping. I mean, there's so much great information in this book that I think it's a great read. So again, it's The Teenage Brain, a neuroscientist's survival guide to raising adolescents and young adults. Such a fantastic read. It is
a great read, and we are using that book as part of the resource with the parenting classes as well. And one of the most important things she points out is that the frontal lobe, which is where we operate with logic and reason and have all of our connections to the right and left hemisphere, it's not fully developed until the mid-20s. And so when we are trying and when we're just super intrigued with why can't they think through what they're doing? Why don't they think through the consequence? There's actually brain science, that answers that question. And the reason why is their frontal lobe isn't plugged in quite yet. So we as the adults are operating as their frontal lobe. When we connect with them emotionally, we fire up the right side of their hemisphere. And then when we redirect, we start getting that left hemisphere, which is encouraging that frontal lobe connection, and it's just really good stuff.
It is. Becky showed that picture to the students at an assembly once, and this is an explanation of some things we understand. So just to let them know, we want to make sure that they are knowing right away. We understand that there are going to be some tough decisions or maybe some questionable decision making as we're going through the junior high years. It's not defining you. It is just a moment. And we can learn to get through it.
And when we share brain research with young people, we're not doing it in a condescending way. We're not saying, oh, you're not all connected. We're not doing. It's more just very matter of fact, and they appreciate understanding their volatility. They know that they're having these highs and lows sometimes within an hour of thinking it's the best day of their life, and then the worst day of their life. So they recognize that they're having all of these strong emotions and this inability at times to really reason. And so the brain research is comforting to them. It actually is assuring to them of, oh, this is going to change. This is going to get more dialed in. Right.
And one of the things that Amy or Frances Jensen says in here too is she's such a great read, and she kind of talks as a scientist, but also as a parent. And so it's really...
Because she had 2 teenage boys.
Yes. But she also says this is not to say that, it's not an excuse saying, well, my frontal lobe's not fully developed, so it's okay. But it is a way to help guide them in understanding, here are some reasons why this could have happened. And
I had an 8th grader say something close. Last week I had an 8th grader let me know that the 7th graders have absolutely no maturity, but that the 8th graders have been sprinkled lightly with some maturity. And that's a direct quote. That the 8th graders, we've been sprinkled lightly with some maturity. And I was like, you know what? That's generous, but yes, you have. You've been lightly sprinkled with some maturity. And there are some 7th graders and some 8th graders that we absolutely trust with really big things because their maturity is really in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even though these are trends and this is information that generally is true, we have some exceptions. We have some kids who are incredibly plugged in and have found that maturity at a much younger age.
Right.
And sometimes there's adults that maybe aren't quite plugged in for
Right.
some reason. So,
and the biggest piece, I mean, one of the things that I just appreciate so much when young people are able to say, yes, I did this, I made this mistake, and we try to offer a soft place for that. So one of the things that we will share with it, we don't like you any less when you make a mistake.
yeah.
We still like you. We think you're fantastic, but let's work through this piece of it. Because and there are some that they're so honest, but there's maybe a little impulsive. And so there's still just some things that they're trying to work out. But they'll tell you every time something goes wrong, they're going to tell you, I did this. It is an amazing age. And we see so much growth in those 2 years with kids. And sometimes we write down words of wisdom from 7th and 8th grade students because
amazing words of wisdom.
They really have some great insight.
They sure do. And it's never a waste of our time to help a young person dial in skills that are going to help them for the rest of their life. So I know some other adults who are surprised that some of us actually choose to work at a junior high. And sometimes parents and sometimes the young people themselves, they think that if they get in trouble or we have to have that conversation again, that we view that as a waste of our time. It is not a waste of our time. We do want to have those conversations. We do want to support young people. It's really why we're there. It's really important. It's hard because education's not supported in the way that, we don't have as many adults working with young people. So it is tricky. But it's not a waste of our time.
It's never a waste of our time. And you had mentioned the amazing people at the school that we have working with. To have a full staff of people who choose to, you have to love that age group and love working with them. There's really the years of service that we have from these educators is incredible.
Yeah.
And then it just chosen to stay and work with these students because it's just that it's such an important job.
It is an important job, and we could write not novels, because we could write nonfiction, I guess.
Yes, we could.
Of the things, of the acts of service and kindness and compassion that are demonstrated by the staff that work with these young people every day.
And from student to student.
Yes.
We see so many moments of kindness and amazing acts from students. They remind us that things are, that there is hope, that there's that things are going to be okay in the future, because there are some days where we think, what happened today? But there are always moments of really great things happening.
Yes, I agreed. So we talked about a few key things. One of the things we touched on a little bit that was brought to our attention, so we actually had local authorities reach out to us to share that there are online platforms, social media platforms that are specifically designed with sexual intention. And they're set up in a way where you are officially supposed to be 18 in order to have an account, but the only thing you have to do to verify that you are 18 or older is to check a box that says you're older than that. Right. And so these websites, these social media platforms, they're designed for adults to meet each other and to possibly even meet up with each other, for different things that they're agreeing to do. And what the local authorities wanted to let us know is that they are aware that young people in our community have actually set up accounts in these platforms, and that at least on one occasion there was an adult who was very aware of a person's age and that their age wasn't as an adult, that they were a younger person, and they were trying to set up a meetup with that young person. And so that's very alarming. And then we had a situation a couple of years ago that was similar as well, through, I think it was even just through Instagram, a more popular way of communicating, where adults were reaching out to young people. And so we want parents to be very aware of this, because there was a lot of emphasis put on the sex trafficking that's taking place throughout the world, and a lot of people wanting to support the organizations that are trying to help stop that. And that is up to everyone to investigate and figure out how they want to support causes like that. But what I would want to share is there are very concerning things possibly happening on the very device that your young person is carrying around, and things that are concerning that are happening in our own community. And so sometimes when we're feeling this frustration of the big things going on in the world, there are some things we can do to help support. But let's not forget that in our very own community, in our very own homes, there might be some dangerous things happening that we need to heighten our awareness to.
Right.
It was also brought to our attention what they're terming sextortion, which is a play on the word extortion, where a person might come into start private messaging you. They might even create a username that seems similar to a friend that you have or a person at school that you have a crush on.
Right.
And they pretend like they're a young person. And then they might start sending you some compromising images supposedly of them and asking for images in return. And then what they're hoping is for the young person to send those images back, and then they start blackmailing that individual. They start saying, okay, you have to keep sending me pictures or I'm going to blast all of the pictures you've already sent out to all of your family and friends. Or they might ask for money. They might even ask for favors and meetups to try to keep the pictures from not going public. And with AI, with artificial intelligence, they might even not have any pictures of that young person. They might create them themselves and say that they, and scare them. And so what we would want young people to know in those instances is please tag in a trusted adult.
Right.
Don't be embarrassed. Maybe you went along with it for a while and you might be so embarrassed that you think you need to keep the secret. Please don't keep the secret. Please talk to a trusted adult. The FBI has actually got a way for these instances to be reported, and we want to help support you and get those things reported.
Right.
Yeah.
We are, and we're seeing it. I mean, I wouldn't say more, but we have seen instances where this is taking place, and it is scary for kids. And I would just reiterate the same thing: tag in a trusted adult. It's just let them know so that you can get some support for that.
Yeah. We're also aware that in our community there have been a lot of young people that have died by suicide and by overdose. And as you've gotten to know young people and experienced some of these losses, what is something you would want the adults to support them or the young people themselves? What's something that stands out to you as an important message to get out there?
One of the things, just as the message we've kind of been talking about throughout, is that there are some moments in your life that are going to be hard, and we want to support you through those moments. We don't want you to feel like you're alone, and so we want people to reach out to us and let us know when they're having a hard time. And I mean and I feel like I think families are doing what they can. I think there are a lot of hard things going on right now.
Families are going through a lot.
They are. And so we want to be a support for those families too. So if families are struggling with something, let us know how we can support you. Come to us and let us know some of the things that are happening so we know how to best support your family, your child, and the parents even.
Yeah. And I know for families, we occasionally have parents who really had challenging experiences in school themselves. And so even coming to the school and even talking to us on behalf of their child, it comes with some angst for them. And we have supported parents that are really going through some hard things. And sometimes the parents are down on themselves and they feel like they're not making all the right decisions and they're discouraged. And we really come to those situations without judgment. Of course, there are things that have to be reported. There are things in those categories, but most always when a parent is talking to us, even if they're sharing some of the personal challenges, maybe they're struggling to get alcohol in check, or they've been unemployed for a while, or they realize that they aren't really overseeing their child's cell phone, or they might feel like they've lost their temper quite a bit. There's a whole lot of things that we can talk about and support a parent in that's just regular stuff, regular life, and we want to support, and we're not going to bring judgment or shame.
No.
We're like, as much as we're talking to you all like experts, we have our moments of human. We have to laugh about them.
We do, because I mean, we try to bring our best selves all the time, but I mean, we're human, and so we don't always hit the mark.
We don't always hit the mark,
and so we have to recognize that in ourselves too, as we're doing our best. We're doing our best to support others and support our families, but no one is perfect, and we recognize that.
Sometimes when I have a big fail, I do feel like it's a reminder for me to be soft and compassionate for other people who are having struggles. And so I'll have the big fail and I'll start to get down on myself and be like, you teach this stuff. What the heck? How can you be so, off the charts in this area in such a bad way? And then I have to be softer with myself and be like, okay, this is a reminder that even with all the reading I've done and all the studying I've done, it's a lot harder in practice than it is in theory. We're all, converted in theory to these great approaches, but it can be really challenging to actually put it into play.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So we're all working on that.
Right. And what is it Maya Angelou? When you know better, do better? Is that that's kind of the, right.
I didn't know she said that, but that is really good.
I think that might be her.
One thing that I say that maybe I should be attributing to her is we're doing the best we can with what we know when we know it.
Right.
So when we know more, we can do better with knowing more. But it's not helpful to just attack ourselves from the past things that we've had going on. One thing I wanted to touch base with is on friendship, and something you might be learning from your young person. It is very common, like say that there's a group of 4 or 5 young people that are very good friends. Within the year, it's common that individually, one by one, they will have stopped by the front office to share that they don't really feel like that group likes them. Even though from us looking in, it seems like they're all good friends and it seems like they are important to each other. But it's common that throughout that school year, at some point, they will each feel like they're not really valued by their friendship group. And so it is important for young people and for us to help young people know that friendship skills do develop, again, kind of like that brain research, that they have a lot of friends who really aren't operating from a fully developed brain. They're offering the best that they can with what they do know, but those skill sets are going to continue to increase and improve. And we want to support them and help them start developing those skills. Listening is the main one that's missing. Right. There's usually 1 or 2 people in the group that are super good talkers and super excited to talk, and they dominate the group. And some of the other people feel like they're not really being seen or heard. And so we can start to work with the group to help them develop some skills to be a little more invested in everybody and not just themselves.
Right, right.
But it is a common thing that we see.
It is. We also see, I heard from so-and-so who heard from so-and-so that she said this about me. And so we will also try to work with them on being really careful about hearing something second or third hand. That messages really get distorted very easily, especially in this age level, in this age group.
And sometimes we're the conveyor of the distorted message because we really want to make good friends with the person. We're like, oh, I'm gonna go tell them this thing that I think I sort of kind of heard, and that's gonna help them feel like I love and care for them, and then they're gonna have a stronger connection with me. And so we might exaggerate it, not because we're a terrible, awful person, but because we're looking for connection, and we just are doing it in a way that's not really helpful. So we try to sort through those things. It can get kind of tricky. Sometimes the mess that's going on, we like seriously need a whiteboard to mark all the he said, she said, then this, then that. But we really do take those things seriously because we want to help young people develop those better skills. But we can't always get to the bottom of exactly who said what.
Right.
Sometimes.
And they're right. We talk about subjective versus objective things that we, with some of those, it does get really diluted sometimes, and it's hard to figure out where things are coming from.
But it is good when they bring it to our attention and we can try to support. That said, things do on occasion cross into not just a maturity level issue or being rude or mean occasionally. We see things that fit more of the category of bullying.
We do. Right.
And the definition of bullying isn't what we see all of the time. Most of what we see are more things related to that maturity and friendship skills. And sometimes it's mislabeled as bullying. But we do on occasion see some behaviors that would fit in that category. And when those things are happening, it's very important for us to support the young person and to try to get a major change in place. And there could be some serious consequences when stuff like that's happening.
Right. And what's difficult for us is that we often don't know. If it's not reported to us as it's happening, it can escalate to a point where we find out, after it's been going on for quite a while. And so we try to let students know that when it's happening, we need to know about it. And we, at the junior high age, they don't like to necessarily come into the office to report things. There's a big stigma about snitching. And we want to try to let students know that it's a difference if it's safety related or if there's bullying. We want you to let us know. So we give a lot of different avenues for that. You can send us emails. You can let a teacher know. You can talk to your parent and have them call us. There's a lot of different avenues for that if they're not comfortable coming into the office to share what's going on. But the sooner we know, the sooner we can do something about it.
Yes, we can at least start inquiring and learning a little bit more of what's going on. And something also that's interesting to note is on occasion, the very first person to report, sometimes someone will eagerly report a situation. And then once video is pulled or more information is gained, the very first person to report may have been the one who instigated the whole situation. And they start to realize, oh my goodness, now that I created this big mess, I need to be the first one to report it. And they're actually trying to do that maybe to save themselves from the situation. So we try to keep that in mind, that just because someone's the first one to report doesn't necessarily mean their version is the reality of the situation.
Right.
So we're going to listen and look at all of the different aspects of how it's being shared with us.
Right.
And just try to get the information that's helpful. But that is really tricky.
It is. And we are unbiased. We try to gather all the information and help everybody in the situation. Because the biggest thing we want kids to feel safe when they're coming to school. We want them to feel welcome. And when they don't, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And it's something and that's something else too, that we know that there have been situations where it's happened, where kids are not feeling safe. And so we do want to make sure that we're talking to our students about reporting things to us when it's going on, so we can get involved sooner.
Yeah. And while we encourage parents to be going through young people's phones, that's not something we will do. If a parent or a young person wants to show us an image on their phone or a screenshot from their phone, we will include that in our inquiry, but we aren't going to go through a young person's phone. The only exception to that I can think of is there have been a couple of instances over the last 10 years or so where I believe the authorities have come to collect phones from young people because of an investigation they're doing. But that's out of our scope. Honestly, we probably wouldn't be able to figure out their phones anyway. So we're not messing with young people's phones.
Right.
But on occasion they will say, such and such got sent, and they want to show us a screenshot. And if they're voluntarily showing us that screenshot, we may include that in helping us understand a situation. Lots of different things that make that tricky too.
And that's something that we try to talk to students about a lot as well, is once you put it out there, you cannot take it back. And I've actually seen some improvements in that. In the last couple of years, I have seen students are starting to really think a little bit more through on what kind of things that they're putting on. But it's tricky because those minds are still developing. Sometimes that impulse to just respond comes quicker than the thought of what might happen if I respond with these words. So we try to also share that information.
Yeah, and we've had parents who were really surprised that their young person even has a social media account because they felt like their child didn't have access to a phone. And so they might be creating these social media accounts and then logging in on their friends' devices, which, while they're in a good friendly way with each other, is one thing. But if there's discord between them or a fight, if they're logged into these accounts on friends' devices, the potential for the now maybe not friend to get into that account and do some things under their name is there. Something else we've seen is a parent will say, well, my child doesn't have a phone. Like, there's no way they could be doing this. They don't have a phone. But what's happened is a friend who had an older device has given their child a device that can operate off of Wi-Fi. So they might not have an official phone or an official phone plan, but they're using it basically like an iPod.
Right.
And they have access to everything through Wi-Fi. And so a parent can really be learning a lot after the fact, because they weren't even aware that their child had access.
Right.
To
Even
like that.
online gaming devices that can be right with screen. I've seen that students have communicated through those, and bringing them to school. So, there are lots of ways that they can be communicating.
So just be aware. I think if there's one thing we want to really emphasize tonight is just that awareness. Heighten your awareness, heighten your awareness, heighten your awareness. Have those conversations. Consider having them when you're in a great, calm state and you're ready to receive the things that they might be sharing. If you want some ideas on that, reach out to us. Reach out to me. You can do that through through the counselor lady private messaging, and I'll get back in touch with you. But those are some of the key things. I wanted to ask you, I want to spend at least a minute on this. It might be a short minute because you might be like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that. But
we have about a minute.
Well, okay, good. So you're working in education, and we're in the state of Arizona, Navajo County. There have been some frustrations with with just being in education. Parents are frustrated with schools. Sometimes communities, we aren't necessarily feeling the supports we would hope in different ways. What are your concerns, or do you see yourself staying in education?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I love working with young people, and it's important. We've got, we actually have a lot of people retiring, and not as many people coming into the field. And so it's important to it's such an important job, to be working with young people and try to help guide them towards success in the future. So I won't be getting out of education. But there are some frustrations. There have been a lot of changes with types of schools that have opened, and the funding that's going to them, and different grants that are available, and some of the things that have to be done for the grants. I mean, there's just a lot. There's a lot going on in education. There's a lot of flux, it seems, in education that can be frustrating. And demands are great. But it's not just in education. Demands are great everywhere, and so it's one of those. It's just a career that does have a lot of changes in it, and getting into it, you just kind of need to know from the beginning that there are going to be a lot of fluctuations as things are being figured out. I mean, my goal for Arizona is to bump. We want to be higher nationally. We want to kind of compete nationally, But as far as we want to be academically rigorous, but we also want to make sure that we're all working together to help students become really successful and healthy in their adult lives.
Yes.
And so, I definitely will stay in education for a very long time. It's such a great profession to be in.
And it's kind of it becomes a calling.
It does, right? And there's just some things that you are. Right, when you wake up and I know that sometimes there are some days where you wake up and you're not super thrilled, but I always look forward to go to work and to see the teachers at work, to see the staff, to see the students. It is really, there is never a boring day in education.
And if there is ever one, I think we would treasure it. If we were like, wow, we were bored today, we might be like, that was something.
Right.
But yeah, we don't really, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
No boring days.
No, it's one of the best. It's just, some of them are, boring or not boring in really great ways. Sometimes, right. You just never know what a day is going to bring. It's, and there's just a lot happening with young people. So
yeah, we joke in the summer or when kids aren't on campus that it's really, out of our comfort zone to work on a project and not be interrupted.
Right.
Like, what's happening? Nobody's crying. Nobody's this. Nobody's that. What are we supposed to do? It's so uninterrupted. We just try to get a lot done. Well, I also really feel the same way, that it is an important field to be in. And if someone needs to be talked into getting into the field, let us know. We'd love to talk you into it.
I will talk you into it.
It does come with its challenges. And there are some things happening right now that we do worry about, the most vulnerable populations of young people in the state of Arizona, because funding is not really supporting them. It is kind of pulling some kids into some situations where they're not being supported the way that the state needs to. And we hope that the state figures that out. Maybe one day I'll go down and have a conversation. I would love to know who to have that conversation with. I've sent some emails, but we would really like to see that the most vulnerable children are getting solid education opportunities in traditional public schools, because they're the ones that we're going to be left with, and we need to be able to offer them the things that they need.
Right. And I mean, there are just the fields, and I will tell you that I feel like our community, we have so many great programs for students. And we just want to make sure that we keep those programs. I mean, we don't want to see any of those go away due to any kind of lack of funding. And so the more educated we can be about the types of funding and what our schools need, and share that with the community, I think the better off we'll be.
I think that's a truth for anyone in Navajo County, and honestly anyone in Arizona, and probably many other states as well. Find out what's going on with that, and learn how to advocate for the vulnerable children in your communities. You know, we can think about our own children and what we want for our very own kids, and that is important, super important. As long as we can also consider those most vulnerable populations and make sure that they're being served well in the whole process too.
Right.
Well, I really appreciate our chat.
I do too.
You're one of my favorite people on the planet.
Back at you.
Absolutely phenomenal principal. Every now and then I will message her and be like, these kids have no idea how lucky they are. They really don't. And there are moments when I'm standing in the hallway and I'm thinking, this is so overwhelming to try to support the young people that are going through so many hard things. And I've had moments when they're going through their passing periods where I get, and I think it comes from a higher power for me, it's the God that's sending me a message of, you are going to be able to understand and reach them in ways that really matter. Not that someone else couldn't do it. I think anyone could provide that for them. But just that reminder, and sometimes I even get little glimpses of what their morning may have been like before they got to school. And without any judgment of any of their home lives, just recognizing that mornings are hectic and they may have had a rough go even getting there. And so we want to be that place where they can check in and start to get their feet situated in the ground and carry on.
Yeah, and I will say that our community is so lucky to have you as
thank you.
as a support for the young people, for the families. There are just so many people that just are reaching out. They are struggling, and so it's so great to see Becky she really does not bring any judgment at all to any situations. And it's incredible. So she's actually been a great mentor to me in working with mental health and supporting the youth.
Let's do part 2 and just talk nice about each other for another hour.
Right. This makes me feel really great, and this is a great way to end every day.
It is a great way to end every day. Well, that said, I have learned. We talked about how the junior high kids have taught us things. I have also learned things from parents sitting in my office who, when they were coming in, I thought, I am so frustrated with this parent. When they get here, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, because I felt all this frustration. But as soon as they sit down and they bring their lived experience, I do just soften, and I'm like, and sometimes they're offering some wisdom and some compassion that is really instructive to me as well. So there's lots we can learn from each other, and we just need to create those spaces.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, I'm just going to remind you guys the name of the grant, and that we have the hotline is 988. You can dial that or text it, and then we want to dial 911 if it's a medical or overdose. We have some activities coming up. January 26th, a free suicide prevention class. In February, there'll be another parenting class posted. I'm not sure who I'm going to talk to in January for our little Facebook live chat, but I'll keep you posted on that. And then I did a whole page for anything else. But I don't think there's anything else.
There's so much else. We don't have time for it.
Anything else? Nope, that's all we got. So reach out through private messaging if you have any other questions about the stuff we've covered, or if you know how to contact us in other ways, feel free to use those other ways. Absolutely. And have a great Christmas. Be good to the junior high staff. If you have the opportunity to be good to any junior high staff anywhere you live in the world, be good to them, because man alive, it's been a rough week. It's been a rough week. All right, bye guys.